And I guess just a reminder that there are still quite a few testing sites open in Dandenong, so anyone who has symptoms or think they might be at risk, please get tested. And I'm very conscious of time and I can't see my clock on my computer, but let me have a look. I won't take questions necessarily now because I think I've gone over time, so my apologies.
Mia, thank you so much. That was really great. Just a few key messages to summarise. If you're showing symptoms, get tested. If you've been in a high risk area, get tested. And obviously, if you test positive, please isolate. Now we want to move on to the next guest speaker. But if you do have questions for Mia, please feel free to put them in the chat and we can certainly come back to you with those answers. Now to talk about COVID safe plans, we want to welcome the person who's responsible for the department's response to outbreaks relevant to businesses and the Director of Outbreak Management from Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. Please welcome Dr. Michelle Delaire.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Very pleased to be here, and thank you, Scott, as well. And so, as Lisa said, I am the Director of Outbreak Management for our department, Jobs, Precincts and Regions. So when Mia was talking a moment ago about DJPR, that's what she meant. Can everyone hear me okay? Can I get some thumbs up if that's all right? Yep, nods. Beautiful. Now I'm going to try sharing my slides. Hopefully I do this as seamlessly as Mia did, and we'll see how we go. Okay. And hopefully there's no background noise. I do still have one child home from school. So, and 2 cats and a dog. So anything could happen. But have we got the video up, Lisa and Steve? Yes, beautiful. Okay, so I had to start by featuring your beautiful music. It's your theatre, isn't it? Beautiful. So that's slide 1. And I'm going to start with a little bit of context just quickly to set the scene. So I suppose it's not a surprise to anyone, we're right at the tail end of 2 waves of infection. And when you look at where we are today, it's really a significant achievement to have got down to that level. And so, of course, it's quite natural that across Victoria's entire business community, thoughts are turning to when are we opening and how do we prepare to reopen. And what I'm going to talk about today is the guidance on how businesses can reopen safely. So I'm also going to really quickly sidetrack and just talk about the virus itself just for a moment to put it in context and the reason why it's so difficult to manage. So firstly, no one's immune. You'll come across thousands of germs every day of your life. Most of them aren't bothering you because you've got immunity. No one has immunity to this. It spreads so easily. Singing, we've seen lots of outbreaks from singing, talking, coughing, maybe even breathing. And most worryingly, it is infectious. People are infectious before they show any symptoms. So you can have a chat to someone today, they seem perfectly fine, you might shake hands, off they go, they're sick the next day, and that person was highly infectious. And that's why this has been so difficult to control. And that's why in having a safe business place, the key thing to bear in mind is people who look perfectly well, who are perfectly well, are the ones who can be shedding the virus. People can die, people get very sick. The long-term effects are just starting to be understood. There's currently no cure and no vaccine. So we need every single Victorian to take this exceedingly seriously. Okay, so how does a business prepare? So I'm going to talk about COVID safe plans. Hopefully, if I could see any faces, I would ask who's got one already, but I can't see anything but my screen. What they are, what you have to do to prepare one, what you do if someone is sick. I'll just touch on financial support today, although I think a future session will cover that, and then some links for more information. And hopefully we can get some of this out to you after, which will have all that information embedded. So this is the front page of the COVID Safe Plan. It's a document that is on the coronavirus.vic.gov.au website. If you haven't been on that website, go on that website. Everything is packaged up in there. Every operating business must have a plan. So businesses open today have them. Businesses that are closed under the current stage restrictions will need one to reopen. It sets out all the things a business will need to do to keep staff, customers safe, but also people coming to service, delivery people, and it's an absolute requirement. So you're going to need one if you don't have one today. It's based on 6 principles, and these are all based on the public health advice, and these are the things that we know, absolutely know, prevent infection spreading if they're done properly. So, and I'm going to go through each one in a moment, but they are physical distancing, face coverings, good hygiene, keeping records and knowing what to do if someone's sick, and I'll spend a little bit of time on that later. Avoiding having people in enclosed spaces and creating workforce bubbles. So that's what every one of your businesses needs to be thinking through. And the plan is really designed, it's a document you walk through, it's got explanatory information. If you work on the online one, you can actually type your answers into the document and save it. And it takes you through all the thinking and all the scenarios you need to think about of what could happen. So let's jump in. Physical distancing. You all know it's been absolute saturation through the media that physical distancing is really important, and we see people practicing that mostly all over the place. But in the workplace context, you need to think about that in terms of all the work areas. So if there's a customer area, if there's an office, if there's storerooms, the bathrooms, the tea room, any areas where people are, public or workers, you need to understand how to keep people apart, whether that's barriers, the stickers on the floor you would have seen. You need to be conscious of the 1 person per 4 metre rule. So that means you need to know how many people can be in each area. So you might, for instance, in this part of your plan, document how many individuals can be in each area of your business, and note that you will have signage and that will be monitored and managed, because it's one thing to have the plan, but you also have to enact it. So that part of the plan would be how you're going to ensure that's enforced, which manager might be responsible for that. So you want the right signage. It's also still will be key that people work from home where they can, and that needs to be considered and documented in the plan. So it might be that admin staff are at home a portion of the time or all the time, but again, you need to go through that thinking of what physical distancing really means in your workplace. And I should say, if a business has multiple work sites, each site needs a plan, because each site will be different. I wish I could see faces and take questions, but will I just take them at the end? Lisa, is that what I'll do? All right, I will push on. Wear a face mask, no surprise to anyone, but in a business context, what you need to have available for workers, what does the protection look like that you need on your site? Are you going to train around it? What are the rules? If it's dirty or wet, that's no good. They have to be laundered every day, or will you provide disposable ones? So there needs to be enough training, and supervisors or managers on site need to be ensuring this happens. We've been working in outbreaks for a while. We know that in the context of some of the outbreaks we've had previously in Victoria, people were all at work masked, all good, and then they were going out in groups for a cigarette, mask is off, and the virus was being transmitted, we think, through that. So it's not just, when you might be at the counter serving, it's all the interactions throughout the day. And if people have to have their mask off because they're eating or smoking or whatever it might be, then it's about thinking about how people can be separated. Good hygiene. So you will need to document the cleaning protocols for your business, and which areas are cleaned daily or weekly, or which are the high touch areas. So a door handle that everyone's touching, or a lift button, or the button on the kettle, whatever it might be, you'll need to document these things get cleaned twice a day or between shifts or whatever it might be. I know some sites they're cleaning entire cleans every night. These are, big businesses with high risk. In a small business, what does that look like for you? It might be twice a day of high touch areas. It might be nightly of the rest of the premises, and you need to think about the different sites. So that has to be documented and managed. And of course, is sanitising stations. So where are you going to have your hand sanitizer? Where customers come in, your workers' entrance, where deliveries come, in the kitchen. So again, document all those spots. It's all basic, it's all really simple, but you need to think it through and then you need to do it. And someone needs to be responsible to make sure those bottles aren't empty. Records are absolutely key. When there's been an outbreak and a business has been able to come back and say, these are all the people who are on shift, here's their phone numbers, and the health department can get onto contact tracing straight away, that works really well and stops infection spreading. If it's, we're not quite sure, or it takes a few days to get that together, that's when things go wrong. So you must keep records and you need to document that in the plan. You also need to have a business contingency plan. Now, I'm going to come back to that in a moment because there's a little bit in that, and that is setting out what you will do if there's an outbreak or a case introduced into your business. And when we talk about records, it's your workers, it's your contractors, it's any service staff that might have come in to work on air conditioning, or it's delivery staff. And we've had examples of delivery drivers that are positive. Anyone who enters the workplace, you want their name and their contact. So that also needs to be in there, and how you're going to do that, who's responsible for that, where those records will be kept, and then who can access them. Avoid interactions in enclosed spaces. So if you have small rooms with multiple people, you need to document how you'll manage that. Do you limit the numbers? Is there an alternative site? And there's a lot more info in the plan itself that can help you with that. And just opening doors and windows makes a big difference in terms of the ability of the virus to infect if it's in the environment. And workplace bubbles. So this is about keeping people in groups or shifts. So if you've got a team of staff that always work Monday, Tuesday, don't mix them up with your weekend crew, or you could lose the whole lot if someone's infected. I don't mean lose the whole lot. I mean, they might all have to quarantine versus a subset of workers that stay together and don't mix. And the difference for a business between having to close entirely for 14 days versus taking off one shift or taking off a small group of workers who worked in one office, say, or one site, is really substantial. And the shift changes, and I don't know if we've got people on today that run businesses with big shifts or not, but we know that sometimes that's really well set up, except they're all getting together between shifts and having a chat, and that is an issue as well. Okay, so the business contingency plan, as I said. So this is part of the COVID safe plan. I'm going to show you. Looks like, oh, you can't see me, can you? So it's just a document you work through and you can fill in. So the contingency plan is what you'll do if someone tests positive. So you need to document, and for a small business, it might just be 10 bullet points in the field of the plan. This is who's in charge, and this is what they will do. For a bigger business or multiple sites, you might want to have a whole proper document you develop and keep current. So who does the worker ring? Who needs to know? Because it could be out of hours or on a weekend or a public holiday that someone finds out they're positive, and then they're linked to your workplace. So who then is going to identify who was on site with them, who was a close contact? How is the cleaning going to be organised? Well, you need to document who's responsible for that. The health department need to be advised on the day, and you need to do a risk assessment. I'll talk about that in a moment. And they will need the contact details of everyone who was potentially exposed. And this is why records are so important. You need to notify it as an incident to WorkSafe if this person was infectious in your business. So who's going to do that? Have that number handy so your plan is all set out. Now, one of the scenarios is that there has been an infected worker on site for some days, which means other workers are at risk. In that case, sometimes the health department will advise a business to partially or fully close. You need a plan for that. You need to set out how that will happen. Who needs to be notified? Are there critical functions? How will servicing of equipment perhaps be managed? How will stock on site be managed if it's perishable? There's a number of things you want to think through now. So in the unlikely event that it happens, you know exactly how you're going to deal with it. And same with reopening. You know, is it just we'll text everyone and they come back in Monday, or is there a series of things that have to happen to have that business up and running and open again? So that's really important. The risk assessment is a document the health department requires. It's on their website. And that's a fabulous document because it takes you through assessing the outbreak. Who's a close contact? Do you have to close or not? It gives you all the logic to work through that. I highly recommend whoever is accountable in your business for responding if there is an outbreak has a look at that document and builds into their COVID safe plan. We have reviewed the risk assessment and we know that we've got all the information required to fill that out on the spot, like that evening, if there is an outbreak, because that derives the health response. Right, so you need to know your responsibilities. It's in this plan, it's on the website. Things change, directions change, you need to keep across it. Build your plan, and I've just walked you through it. You sit down and do it today if you haven't got one already. Keep it up to date. So if you change how you're operating, you know, the way you're running at your factory, say, then you want to make sure you plan covers that. If you've got different staff, make sure they're covered. We don't need your plan submitted, but there are authorised officers who will be monitoring. They want to make sure every business has a plan, and they want to make sure the business has implemented it. They put the plan into practice. No good having paper and there's no sanitizer. So if on request, you need to be able to show that. So you need to make sure someone on site always knows where it is. Like the other documentation you might show to WorkSafe if there's an inspection. There are some penalties if the right things aren't in place. But really at this point, what we want is businesses to understand their obligations and get these plans in place, even if they're simple or they're just a start, so that you've at least started that process of working out what needs to be done. Right, I will really quickly run through a couple of other bits. What to do if someone's unwell, if you have a confirmed case, more info, and touching on financial support. We've got a whole series of these little display posters that we can get to the council if we haven't already, that you can put up. So this is, you can have this up in your office or your factory or whatever you're running, your shop, for workers. So if you're feeling sick, go home, get tested, don't come back in. Stay home. There's financial assistance available for workers. Stay home till you've got a negative result. And if it's positive, obviously a whole set of other things happen. But this is a really key message, and we know people coming to work when they're unwell, we know that has been a core driver of outbreaks in businesses. And for the employer, once you've got your COVID safe plan and the business contingency plans in there, you know exactly what to do. So if someone's positive, you've got your list of who the close contacts are, you'll have your phone list or your email list or WhatsApp, whatever it is. Let all those people know you need to be tested and you need to stay home. Get the clean organised, tell WorkSafe, contact DHHS, do your risk assessment. And again, being a bit repetitive, I know, keeping those records and making sure that you respond really quickly when it happens. There's a whole suite of financial reports. There's a lot of detail in it, so I won't go through it, but the coronavirus.vic.gov.au website sets out for employees, business owners, sole traders, etc., what's available. And then there's probably, it can be a bit overwhelming, but there's a lot of information out there. The Coronavirus Vic website's a great one. The health department has confirmed case in a workplace. If you search that, you will get the risk assessment and you'll get everything you have to do in detail if you suspect or you know there's a positive in your work site. And that can be the difference between one person going home sick and our business closing for 2 weeks and a whole series of people who are unwell. There's a Business Vic Gov site, you're probably all aware of that. There's a phone number with that. And then there's a coronavirus hotline for people who are positive or think they might have a positive, and that gives you the detailed advice. So that's my last slide. Happy to take any questions. Hope I kept to time. Thank you very much.